The biologist held the scale up to the laboratory light, 7 centimeters long, olive green fading to brown at the edges. The surface showed a pattern unlike any reptile native to South Carolina. Under the microscope, the cellular structure appeared even stranger. Keratin layers too thick for a snake, too rigid for an alligator. The scale had been pulled from the damaged door panel of a Lee County patrol car 3 days earlier, along with blood that matched no animal in the genetic database, along with partial prints from a 3-fingered hand that measured 14 inches across. The biologist set down the scale and typed a single line in her report: species unknown. The town of Bishopville sits in the heart of Lee County, South Carolina. 3,000 residents spread across a landscape of cotton fields and pine forests. The Lynches River winds through the eastern portion of the county. The Great PD River marks the eastern boundary. Between them lies a maze of creeks, marshes, and cypress swamps. The largest is Scape Ore Swamp, 2,000 acres of dark water and ancient trees. The swamp got its name from the Revolutionary War. Local stories say patriots dumped British cannons there to keep them from falling into enemy hands. The iron ore escaped into the murky depths. Others claim the name comes from escaped slaves who hid iron tools stolen from plantations. The metal helped them survive in the wilderness. Whatever the truth, the swamp has carried that name for over 2 centuries, along with a reputation that keeps most people away after dark. Long before European settlers arrived, the PD and Catawba tribes lived along these waterways. Their oral traditions speak of a creature that inhabited the deepest parts of the swamp. The descriptions remained consistent across different tribal groups. Taller than a man, covered in scales like a serpent, eyes that glowed red in darkness, hands that ended in claws. The tribes avoided the heart of the swamp. They left offerings at its borders, fish wrapped in corn husks, clay bowls filled with berries. They believed this kept the creature satisfied, kept it from venturing into their villages to hunt. Spanish explorers recorded the first written account in 1670. Juan de Rivera led an expedition through the Carolina lowlands. His journal describes his native guides refusing to enter a particular swamp. They spoke of a demon that walked like a man but bore the skin of a lizard. Rivera thought they were trying to frighten him away from potential gold deposits. He ordered 5 men to explore the swamp. Only 3 returned. They reported seeing huge footprints in the mud, 3-toed, deeply pressed into the earth. The 2 missing men were never found. British colonists established farms near the swamp in the 1742. Thomas Whitfield owned 300 acres of cotton land. His diary from 1743 describes finding his livestock killed in unusual ways, throats torn out with what appeared to be claws, bodies partially eaten but not in the manner of wolves or bears. He organized hunting parties to find the predator. They discovered tracks leading into the swamp, 3 toes on each foot, a stride length suggesting something walking upright. Whitfield's diary entries stop abruptly in September of that year. County records show his farm was abandoned. His family returned to Charleston. They never explained why. The Sutton family purchased land adjacent to the swamp in 1821. For 4 generations, they documented strange occurrences on their property. Cattle found dead with surgical precision wounds, dogs that refused to track game near certain areas, unusual calls echoing from the swamp on foggy nights. In 1892, William Sutton shot at what he described as a man-shaped creature covered in scales. He claimed to have wounded it, found green blood and several scales on the ground. He preserved the scales in a glass jar. The jar remains in the possession of his descendants. Modern analysis proved inconclusive. The scales don't match any catalogued species. The 20th century brought more encounters. In 1925, a railroad crew laying track near the swamp reported seeing a large bipedal creature watching them from the tree line. 7 workers gave matching descriptions: 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales, arms longer than a human's proportions would suggest. When they approached, it dropped to all fours and fled into the swamp, moving faster than any man could run. The railroad company documented the incident, then transferred the entire crew to another project 50 miles away. During the Great Depression, federal workers drained portions of the swamp for farmland. The Civilian Conservation Corps set up camps along its borders. Workers reported tools going missing. Food stores raided during the night. Strange sounds that kept them awake. In 1936, 2 CCC workers disappeared while surveying the swamp's interior. Search parties found their equipment, their boots, massive 3-toed prints in the mud around their last known position, but no bodies. The federal government shut down the project 3 weeks later. The swamp was left undisturbed. World War II brought military training to the area. Fort Jackson used the region for wilderness exercises. Soldiers on night maneuvers reported encounters with what they assumed were enemy infiltrators, tall figures moving through the darkness, too fast to be clearly seen, too agile to be caught. Several soldiers fired at these figures, found blood trails leading into the swamp, but no bodies. The army investigated, found tracks and scale samples, classified the findings. The records remained sealed until 1978, when a Freedom of Information request revealed portions of the reports. Most pages were still redacted, but the visible sections mentioned an unidentified biological entity. The modern era of lizard-man sightings began on the 29th of June 1988. Christopher Davis was 17 years old. He worked the late shift at McDonald's in Bishopville. His shift ended at midnight. He drove home along Highway 15, a road that runs parallel to Scape Ore Swamp. His tire blew out near the Scape Ore Bridge. Christopher knew how to change a tire. His father had taught him young. He pulled onto the shoulder and got to work. The night was humid. Dark clouds covered the moon. His car's headlights provided the only illumination. As he worked, he heard splashing from the swamp, something large moving through the water, then the sound of something climbing the embankment. He stood and looked toward the swamp. 2 red points of light reflected his headlights. They were 7 feet off the ground. Christopher backed toward his car. The lights moved, circling him. Branches cracked under heavy footfalls. He worked faster, tightened the last lug nut, threw his tools in the back seat. No time to properly store them. The red lights emerged from the tree line. Christopher saw it fully illuminated by his headlights. His description has remained consistent for 35 years. 7 feet tall, covered in green scales that looked wet. 3 fingers on each hand ending in black claws. The face was almost human in structure, but covered in scales. The mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. It made a sound between a hiss and a growl. Christopher jumped in his car, started the engine. The creature charged. It covered 30 feet in seconds. Christopher threw the car in drive, pressed the accelerator. The creature leaped onto the roof. He felt the car rock under its weight. Heard metal tearing, claws scratching. He swerved, trying to throw it off. After several hundred yards, the weight disappeared. In his rearview mirror, he saw it standing in the road. Then it turned and walked back toward the swamp. Christopher drove straight to the Lee County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Mike Stevens was on duty. He knew Christopher. Good family, no history of trouble. Not the type to make up stories, but what he described seemed impossible. Until Stevens examined the car. 3 parallel gouges ran from the roof to the trunk. Each scratch was 2 inches deep. The metal was torn, not cut. Whatever made them had incredible strength. Stevens took photographs, made plaster casts of partial handprints on the trunk. 3 fingers, claws clearly visible in the impressions. By morning, the story had spread through Bishopville. Local newspaper reporter Jennifer Walker interviewed Christopher. His story never changed. Every detail remained consistent. Within days, larger media outlets picked up the story. Columbia, Charlotte, Atlanta, CNN sent a crew. The quiet town became a media circus. Reporters filled every motel. Camera crews lined up outside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Liston Truesdale tried to maintain order. He assigned deputies to investigate. They found more evidence. Tom and Mary Way discovered their car damaged on the 14th of July. The scratches matched those on Christopher's car. The chrome molding had been pulled off with tremendous force. George Rawson reported finding 30-gallon drums of feed destroyed. Claw marks through the metal, contents scattered. 3-toed prints in the spilled grain. The sightings continued through July. Bertha Bradley saw it cross highway 15 inches broad daylight. She was driving home from church. The creature walked upright across the road, disappeared into the woods before she could stop. She didn't report it immediately, afraid people would think she was lying. When she finally came forward, investigators found tracks where she said the creature had crossed. Kenneth Orr, an airman from Shaw Air Force Base, made headlines on the 29th of July. He claimed the creature attacked his car, showed reporters extensive damage, scratches, dents, torn metal. His detailed description matched Christopher's exactly. International media coverage exploded. Then Orr admitted he'd made it up, damaged his own car, wanted attention. The hoax devastated the credibility of all witnesses. Media crews left. The story became a joke. But the sightings didn't stop. They just stopped being reported to authorities. People saw things, found tracks, discovered dead livestock, but they kept quiet. Nobody wanted to be the next Kenneth Orr, called a liar, a hoaxer, desperte for attention. The lizard man became a secret the community kept, discussed in whispers, acknowledged but not advertised. In 1990, construction worker Jason Winters was part of a crew building a new development near the swamp. They were laying underground pipes, clearing land. One afternoon, Winters was operating a backhoe near the tree line. Movement caught his eye. A figure standing in the shadows about 40 feet away, 7 feet tall, covered in dark scales, watching him. They stared at each other for maybe 10 seconds. Then it turned and walked deeper into the swamp, walking upright like a man, but moving with a strange, fluid gait. Winters told his foreman. They found tracks where the creature had stood, 3-toed, pressed deep into the soft earth. The foreman told Winters to keep quiet. They had a job to finish, didn't need complications, but Winters never forgot what he saw. Years later, he still refuses to work near Scape Ore Swamp. A group of teenagers camping near the swamp in 1993 had their own encounter, 5 kids from Bishopville High School. They'd pitched tents in a clearing about 100 yards from the water, built a fire, told ghost stories. Around midnight, they heard something large moving through the underbrush, circling their camp. They assumed it was a bear, made noise to scare it away. The movement stopped. An hour later, something slashed their tent. 3 parallel cuts through the canvas. They heard breathing, heavy, rhythmic. Something scraped against the tent fabric. Testing it. They huddled inside, terrified. Nobody slept. At first light, they fled, found 3-toed prints all around their campsite, each print 15 inches long. The local newspaper ran their story. But without adult witnesses, few took it seriously. The lizard man gained official recognition in an unexpected way, the 2nd of August, 2005. South Carolina Emergency Management Division updated their disaster preparations. They included protocols for cryptid displacement during natural disasters, specifically mentioning the lizard man. If flooding forced it from the swamp, they warned, residents should take precautions. They called it a tongue-in-cheek addition. But locals understood. Every major storm brought sightings. The creature ranged wider when its habitat flooded. Dixie Rawson lived on a farm bordering the swamp. February 2008. Her cats started disappearing. 6 cats in 2 weeks. She found tracks around the barn, 3-toed, too large for any native animal. Then she saw it, standing at the edge of her pasture at dusk, covered in dark scales. When it noticed her watching, it dropped to all 4s, ran toward the swamp. She called the sheriff. Deputy Tom Morrison responded. Found tracks, took photographs, but without clear evidence of a crime, there was little he could do. The invention of cell phone cameras changed everything. Now witnesses could document encounters immediately. The 2nd of August, 2015. Jim and Linda Wilson were leaving church. Their car wouldn't start. While Jim checked under the hood, Linda noticed something near the tree line. She grabbed her phone, took 3 pictures before it moved. The images are blurry, taken from about 70 yards away, but they show something bipedal, approximately 7 feet tall, dark-colored, standing among the trees. Photo analysis proved inconclusive. Some experts claimed it showed a person in a costume. Others pointed out anatomical proportions inconsistent with a human. The distance and image quality prevented definitive conclusions, but the Wilsons maintained they saw something extraordinary, something that shouldn't exist. May 2017 brought the most dramatic encounter in decades. A family of 4 driving home from vacation, the Hendersons. They stopped to photograph the sunrise near Scape Ore Bridge, the same location where Christopher Davis had his encounter nearly 30 years earlier. 8-year-old Emma Henderson pointed at the trees, said something was watching them. Her father, Robert, looked where she pointed, saw it clearly. 7 feet tall, covered in scales, standing perfectly still, about 50 yards away. Robert grabbed his camera. Professional equipment. He'd been photographing landscapes all week, raised it to his eye. The creature stepped backward, disappeared into thicker cover, but Robert got one shot. The image shows a dark figure partially obscured by vegetation. The body shape suggests something bipedal. The surface texture appears rough, possibly scaled, but shadows and foliage prevent clear identification. The Hendersons filed a report with the sheriff's office, posted their photo online. It went viral within hours. Cryptozoology websites analyzed every pixel. Skeptics called it pareidolia, seeing patterns that aren't there. Believers called it proof. The debate continues. The Hendersons received death threats from both sides. They no longer discuss the encounter publicly. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the University of South Carolina has studied the lizard man phenomenon for 15 years. She's interviewed dozens of witnesses, analyzed physical evidence, studied the ecological niche such a creature would occupy. Her conclusion remains professionally neutral, but she notes interesting patterns. Sightings cluster around specific areas of the swamp, follow seasonal patterns, correlate with environmental changes. She theorizes that if the creature exists, it's likely not a single animal. A breeding population would require at least 50 individuals to remain genetically viable. The swamp could support such a population, plenty of fish, small mammals, isolated habitat, fresh water. The ecosystem hasn't been thoroughly surveyed. New species are still discovered in wetlands regularly, usually insects or amphibians, but occasionally larger animals. Marine biologist Dr. James Patterson examined scale samples collected over the decades. The cellular structure is unique, shows characteristics of both aquatic and terrestrial adaptation. The keratin layers suggest something that spends time both in water and on land. DNA extraction has proved difficult. Samples are often contaminated or degraded, but what genetic material has been recovered doesn't match any known species. It's reptilian, but doesn't fit neatly into any existing taxonomic category. The economic impact can't be ignored. The annual Lizard Man Festival brings thousands of tourists to Bishopville. Hotels book solid, restaurants hire extra staff, gift shops stock special merchandise. The local museum displays casts of footprints, photographs of damaged vehicles, maps of sighting locations. The creature that once terrorized the community now sustains it economically. Critics suggest this creates motive for hoaxes. Keep the legend alive. Stage sightings, plant evidence. but the original witnesses gained nothing from their encounters. Christopher Davis avoids publicity, refuses most interview requests, never profited from his experience. Most witnesses wish they'd never seen anything. They don't want fame. They want to be believed. Environmental changes threaten Scape Ore Swamp. Development pressure from Colombia's expansion, agricultural runoff affecting water quality. Climate change bringing longer droughts, more severe storms. The wetland ecosystem struggles to survive. If something unusual lives there, its habitat shrinks yearly. This might explain increased sightings near populated areas. The creature, if it exists, has fewer places to hide. Local hunter Travis Morton knows the swamp intimately. 3 generations of his family have hunted these lands. He's seen things he can't explain, prints that don't match any track guide. Trees with claw marks, 15 feet up, areas where no wildlife will venture. He believes multiple creatures exist, hidden in the swamp's most inaccessible regions, coming out only when necessary, avoiding human contact when possible. In 2019, a team of researchers from Duke University spent 3 months studying Scape Ore Swamp. They used environmental DNA sampling, collecting water samples, testing for genetic material from all organisms in the ecosystem. They catalogued hundreds of species, found several previously unknown to science, mostly microorganisms, some invertebrates, but they also found anomalous DNA sequences, reptilian, but not matching any known species. The samples were too degraded for full sequencing. The results remain officially inconclusive. The History Channel filmed a documentary in 2022, brought in top equipment, thermal imaging drones, underwater cameras, motion sensors throughout the swamp, 6 weeks of intensive searching. They recorded unusual heat signatures, large, moving bipedally, but always too distant for clear imaging. Strange vocalizations that didn't match any known animal. Fresh tracks appearing overnight in areas under surveillance, but somehow never capturing the creature itself on camera. One interesting detail emerged from their research. Every credible sighting occurred within a specific temperature range, between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. This suggests a creature with particular thermoregulation needs, not fully cold-blooded like most reptiles, but not warm-blooded like mammals, something in between. This could explain seasonal sighting patterns, why encounters cluster in spring and fall. The indigenous tribes' oral histories provide another perspective. Joseph Crowhorse, a Catawba elder, visited the swamp in 2018. He performed traditional ceremonies at locations his ancestors considered sacred. He later explained that the creature isn't good or evil, simply ancient, part of the land, since before human memory. He said it will exist as long as the swamp exists. When the wetlands die, the creature dies with them. Recent sightings continue the pattern established over centuries. Brief encounters, usually at dawn or dusk, always near water. The creature seems curious about humans, but avoids direct contact. It watches from a distance, investigates abandoned camps and vehicles, leaves evidence of its presence, but remains elusive. Either through intelligence or instinct, it maintains the mystery. March 2023 brought an unusual incident. A wildlife photographer set up trail cameras throughout the swamp, hoping to photograph river otters. Instead, he captured something else. Several images show a large figure moving through frame, bipedal in some shots, on all fours in others. The infrared sensors show a heat signature larger than any known local animal, but the creature always remained partially obscured, behind trees, in tall grass. Just out of clear view, the photographer, Marcus Johnson, enhanced the images, applied various filters. The results suggest something covered in scales or rough skin, approximately 7 feet tall when upright. Proportions that don't match a human in a suit, but also not matching any known animal. Johnson believes he photographed something extraordinary. Critics argue the images are too ambiguous, the debate continues. Local law enforcement takes a pragmatic approach. Sheriff Thomas Wells has been with Lee County for 23 years. He's investigated dozens of lizard man reports, seen the evidence, interviewed witnesses. He doesn't dismiss the sightings, but he also doesn't endorse them. His job is public safety. If something dangerous lives in the swamp, people need warning. If it's just legend, there's no harm in caution. The sheriff's office maintains a file of all reported encounters: photographs, plaster casts, written statements, maps marking sighting locations. The file grows each year. Not all reports are credible. Some are obvious hoaxes. Others are misidentified animals. But a core of encounters remains unexplained. Credible witnesses, physical evidence, consistent descriptions spanning decades. Dr. Mitchell points out that new large species are still discovered. The Syola, a large mammal, wasn't scientifically documented until 1992. The Bornean rainbow toad was thought extinct until rediscovered in 2011. The world isn't fully catalogued. Remote areas hold secrets. Wetlands in particular harbor biodiversity. If a large reptilian species exists in Scape Ore Swamp, it wouldn't be the strangest discovery in recent history. But skeptics raise valid points. No bodies have been found. No clear photographs despite everyone carrying cameras. No hair or tissue samples providing definitive DNA evidence. They argue mass hysteria. Misidentified alligators. People seeing what they expect to see. The human tendency to pattern match, to create monsters from shadows. The truth remains frustratingly elusive. Each new piece of evidence gets challenged. Each sighting gets scrutinized. Believers and skeptics interpret the same data differently. Meanwhile, the creature, if it exists, continues its ancient patterns, living in the deep swamp, occasionally venturing out, leaving just enough evidence to perpetuate the mystery. State wildlife biologist Rebecca Torres has a different theory. She studied apex predators for 20 years. She notes that the lizard man sightings follow patterns similar to territorial behavior in known reptiles. The creature appears most often during mating seasons of local alligator populations, spring and early summer. It might be responding to chemical signals, pheromones in the air. Perhaps it's a hybrid species, natural but undocumented. Torres spent 6 months analyzing attack patterns on livestock near the swamp. The wounds don't match alligator attacks. Too precise, too calculated. Alligators tear and roll. These wounds show straight cuts, deep punctures, evidence of gripping with clawed hands rather than jaws. She's collected tissue samples from wound sites, found traces of an enzyme similar to monitor lizard saliva, but with different protein structures, something that might prevent blood clotting, explaining why attacked animals bleed out so quickly. In September 2023, 2 park rangers made an interesting discovery. During routine wetland surveys, they found a series of underground dens near the swamp's edge. The entrances were partially submerged, hidden by cypress roots. Each den was large enough for something human-sized to enter. The walls showed claw marks, fresh ones overlapping older marks, going back years. They found scales inside, shed skin fragments, fish bones arranged in neat piles. The rangers, David Kim and Maria Santos, documented everything, took samples, set up hidden cameras. 2 weeks later, the cameras were destroyed. Not removed, destroyed, crushed and twisted. The memory cards were missing, but one camera's backup battery had failed 3 hours before the destruction. It captured 40 seconds of footage. Something large moving past, bipedal. The image quality is poor. But the gait is clearly non-human. The stride length impossible for a person. Local veterinarian Dr. Amanda Foster has treated numerous animals with unusual injuries over her 30-year practice. Dogs with deep puncture wounds, cats with broken bones consistent with being grabbed by large hands, livestock with precise cuts along major arteries. She keeps detailed records, maps the incidents. They cluster around full moons, not because of lunar effects, but because nocturnal predators hunt more effectively in bright moonlight. Foster performed necropsies on several animals allegedly killed by the lizard man. She found something curious: traces of a paralytic compound in tissue samples, similar to certain reptile venoms, but not matching any known species. The compound appears to be delivered through saliva, not fangs. This would explain witness accounts of animals found dead with minimal struggle signs. They were paralyzed before being killed. October 2023 brought an encounter that challenged previous assumptions. Night security guard William Harper was patrolling a warehouse complex near the swamp. His job involved checking perimeter fences, looking for vandals, keeping homeless camps from forming. At 3 in the morning, he heard metal creaking, found a section of chain-link fence pulled apart, the wire mesh peeled back like paper. Harper followed footprints through the gap, 3-toed, leading to the loading dock. The steel door was damaged, deep gouges around the lock mechanism. Inside, he found opened food containers, industrial-sized bins of rice, beans, dried fruit, all torn open, contents partially consumed. Security footage showed a dark figure entering through the damaged door, walking upright, arms too long for human proportions. It spent 20 minutes eating, then left the same way it entered. The warehouse owner didn't press charges, didn't want publicity, but Harper kept copies of the security footage, enhanced it using software. The creature's face is partially visible in one frame. The features are almost human, but wrong. Eyes too large, nose too flat, mouth too wide, covered in what appears to be scales. Harper quit his job the next week, moved to Georgia, still won't talk about what he saw in detail. Anthropologist Dr. Kevin Richards studies cryptid sightings from a cultural perspective. He spent 5 years interviewing lizardman witnesses, found interesting psychological patterns. Witnesses often report feeling observed for days before their encounters, strange dreams, unexplained anxiety. Some describe hearing their names called from the swamp, voices that sound familiar but wrong, like someone imitating a loved one's voice. Richards believes these psychological effects are key to understanding the phenomenon. Either the creature has abilities beyond the physical, or witnesses are experiencing something that transcends normal reality. He's documented 17 cases of people having lizardman dreams before moving to Lee County, dreaming of the creature before knowing it existed. This suggests something beyond simple misidentification or hoaxing. The economic data tells its own story. Property values near Scape Ore Swamp are 30% lower than comparable land elsewhere in Lee County. Despite the tourist draw, insurance companies charge higher premiums for livestock coverage. 3 companies stopped covering animal attacks entirely. They don't officially acknowledge the lizard man, but their actuarial data shows unusual loss patterns. Something is killing animals in ways that don't match normal predator behavior. Christopher Davis is now in his 50s. He still lives in South Carolina, rarely discusses that night in 1988. When asked, he simply says he knows what he saw. The terror was real. The creature was real. He doesn't care if people believe him. He knows the truth. And he still won't drive past Scape Ore Swamp at night. The swamp itself remains largely unchanged. Dark water reflects the cypress canopy. Spanish moss hangs like curtains. The air stays thick with humidity and mystery. Locals still report strange sounds on foggy nights. Tourists come hoping for sightings. Scientists debate possibilities. And somewhere in those 2,000 acres, something waits, watches, endures. Recent technological advances have provided new investigation methods. Thermal drones can cover vast swamp areas quickly. Environmental DNA sampling can detect organisms from microscopic traces. Satellite imagery reveals paths and clearings invisible from the ground. Yet the lizard man remains elusive. Some researchers suggest this indicates intelligence. The creature understands human technology, adapts its behavior, avoids detection deliberately. Former Sheriff's Deputy Mike Stevens retired in 2020 after 32 years of service. He investigated more lizard man reports than any other officer. He keeps personal files, photos never released to the public, witness statements too strange for official reports. He tells of finding makeshift tools near sighting locations, sharpened sticks, stones arranged in patterns, evidence of intelligence beyond animal instinct. Stevens describes one incident never officially documented. July 1995. He responded to a missing person report. A homeless man who camped near the swamp found the man's tent shredded. Blood on the ground, drag marks leading into the water. But also something else, drawings in the dirt, circular patterns, symbols that looked almost like writing. He photographed them, showed them to university linguists. No one could identify the symbols, but several noted they showed mathematical progressions, repeating sequences, intentional design. The missing man was never found. Stevens kept the photos, still studies them, believes they're evidence of intelligence, communication, maybe an attempt to leave a message or a warning. He won't go near the swamp anymore, not because he's afraid, but because he respects boundaries. Some mysteries, he says, aren't meant to be solved. Whether the lizard man is real or legend doesn't change its impact. It's part of South Carolina's identity, part of the fear that keeps people from wandering too deep into wild places, part of the wonder that suggests the world still holds mysteries, that not everything has been discovered, documented, explained away. The next time you drive through Lee County at night, watch the tree line carefully, listen for sounds that don't belong, look for eyes that shine red in your headlights. And if you see something standing 7 feet tall at the swamp's edge, covered in scales, watching you with ancient intelligence, remember that 40 years of witnesses came before you. They saw something that shouldn't exist, something that challenges our understanding of the natural world, something that reminds us that maps still have blank spaces, that here there be monsters. What walks through Scape Ore Swamp when darkness falls? Is it an undiscovered species, a prehistoric survivor, a creature from folklore given life by collective belief, or something stranger still? Share your thoughts and your own encounters with the unexplained in the comments below. And if you want more journeys into the unknown, please like and subscribe for stories that question everything we think we know.